You know, in one of the neat things about the conference we have at this time of year, it is totally dedicated to families. Not only to families, but to the safety of the people who actually go out and do the work every day. You know, there isn't an elected official in this room or a caring person sitting next to you that the one thing they never want to do is go home and tell somebody's family that they're not coming home tomorrow or that they got injured. And so in pursuit of that, we try to put together the best programs we possibly can to at least share the information that the one person who's in charge of you not getting hurt out there is you. And within that vein, we've got two great speakers this morning. We have got the Commissioner of Labor, who is an absolute rock star and a friend of county government. But to kick it off this morning is we have got a young lady that's got a very compelling story to tell. And we invited her not because of the fact that she is a huge star in motivational speaking, but she is an absolute test of human spirit. Well, I was reminded this morning that 26 years ago, yesterday, we met the Gina Patterson family in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Story isn't about me, but I was in the burn center at the Hillcrest Burn Center, and everybody in eastern Oklahoma was praying that I survived. But my wife met a family of a young girl who was tragically involved in an accident that was flown into Tulsa. She won't tell you this, but I will. In visiting with the doctors and the nurse practitioners there, she was the worst burn victim that had ever been treated at the Hillcrest Burn Center, which is the principal burn center for the state of Oklahoma. They flew her in live flight from Arkansas. So if you will, let's give her courage. You know, this is going to be a compelling story. It's not a story just about tragedy. It's a story about rebuilding your life after tragedy. So if you will, let's give a warm welcome to Gina Patterson from Mesquite, Texas.
Thank you. I was told I have to come on the stage. Good morning. I see all my back row Baptists. Y'all stole my seat. So I'm really, really nervous. I feel like I hear an echo, but I've never spoken to a group this large before, so bear with me. I may stutter a little. No, I'm kidding. And at the end, perhaps if anyone has any questions, then feel free to ask. I don't mind if we have time. So my story started a long time ago. So growing up, high school, played sports, I think 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. The reason why I'm saying this is I think that plays a big role in my recovery process, and we'll get to the accident shortly. Senior picture. This usually makes the most impact whenever I show people. They usually see me like this, but want to know what I look like before. So, on your left was my father, and bottom right was my sister and father. These are some of the last photos that I have of them. So the day of the accident, I wasn't planning on working with my dad and his work crew. It was in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and he was a painting contractor, did some construction, small, and my sister worked for him. She was 8 years older than me. And it was Father's Day weekend, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna go help them out, try to knock out the job they were working on, so everyone could go home early for the weekend. So I showed up, and whenever I got there, it started sprinkling on my way into park on a cul-de-sac. and that'll be important shortly. So it started sprinkling, and then I walked into the house to see what they were working on, and they were using lacquer thinner as a solvent to help pull up carpet like this in here, industrial carpet off of concrete. And the fumes have been building up due to the rainstorm moving in. So then we had to shut windows, 2 windows halfway, 1 window completely, and 1 door. There were 2 doors in the room that opened directly to the outside area. And then there was a water heater in the room, and it was sitting directly on the floor. I believe code is like 20 inches. I'm not positive. However, I don't think that would have helped in our situation. So we continued using the lacquer thinner, and the fumes built up, and suddenly the pilot light kicked on to reheat the water in the tank, which caused a flash fire. The investigator told us it was between 1,200 and 2,000 degrees. So I was in the room maybe 5 seconds. I just so happened to remember about how far I was from the door, and there was a window in the upper part of it. We've all seen those, usually a back door. And so I turned and jumped and busted through there. So that's how I got out. And my dad, sister, and 2 workmen, they did not make it out. But after that, I walked up around the house to the front door, took off my shoes. It's weird how you think whenever something intense, happens like that. But I took off my tennis shoes because I didn't want to mess up the floor. And so I was fixing to go back in, and I decided I better go call 911. So I walked across the street. I told the lady if she would call 911. She already had. And ambulance, fire truck showed up. I walked back outside and went to the back of the ambulance and just asked the paramedic, "Do you want me to climb inside?" And he just shook his head yes. He was really surprised I was still walking around. So I climbed inside. He started IV. We went to the hospital. Raise your hand if you've been to Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Okay. Well, in 1993, they didn't have a ventilator. So my paramedic was having to handbag me air to make sure I was getting enough. And the storm got worse. So that hospital had to they first called Hillcrest Hospital that Gina and I were in, and that pilot would not go out in that storm due to, I think it was a level 6 convective cell, which could be tornadoes, hail, anything. And he told them that he was not gonna go out in it. Then they called a pilot from Little Rock, Arkansas. He said the same thing. I'm not going out in that. Finally, a pilot in Joplin, Missouri, former military pilot, of course, he decided to brave it, him and his crew, and they flew into Eureka Springs at the baseball field and picked me up and flew real tight around the edge of the storm and got me to Hillcrest Hospital. So, see me after class? No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. I think mine's off. Anyway, this was the jewelry I was wearing at the Eureka Springs Hospital. They did have to cut off my rings. The heat was so intense that it blew the glass out of the crystal. One of the nurses was very nice and cleaned it up and mailed it to me. So I've been trying to hit these high points. So once I got to Hillcrest Hospital, I was on the ventilator 6.5 weeks. I had 19 surgeries in 9 weeks. I did have multiple blood transfusions. Let's see. I did have to have my eyes sewn shut because my eyelids were damaged. However, by the grace of God, my eyes were not damaged. And In fact, my mom, whenever she spoke with the doctor, she was like, was she wearing her glasses or contacts? And I had my contacts in. So my doctor was really surprised that my contacts didn't melt to my eyes. But they found them, but they had to redo my eyelids. And that was really weird for 3 days, not being able to see. And I did have pins in all my fingers. Obviously, I had to have certain portions amputated. In fact, Dr. Giddens, my surgeon, he received a lot of criticism from his peers. They were asking him, like, why don't you just amputate her hands? She's never going to be able to use them again. And he said, no, this is my patient. I'm going to do what I can do to help her. And he's former military surgeon. So he worked with a lot of burn patients. Yes, and just my hospital bill, not doctors, anesthesiologists, any of that, that was $500,000 for 9 weeks. So burns are very expensive. I think even more expensive now. This is the size of some of the pins that they had to put in my fingers. And I just wanted you to see what they look like. I remember the first time that I saw my hands, and they had the little white caps on the end, and I didn't have contacts or glasses in. And I remember asking the burn technician, hey, can you trim my nails? Because I thought that was my nails. So I was like, can you trim those? And he goes, you don't have any nails. So I was like, okay, all right. So, give you an idea, that's my left hand on the right, your right. Normal hand is on the left. And as you can see, I think in the middle finger, I do have a staple. I have a lot of staples. I don't set off the alarms at the airport, but I have injured my legs before, and I had to go get them x-rayed, and I believe it's one of my left leg. I have like 18 staples like in this section. So it's they had to do so many surgeries in that first 9 weeks where I can't remember how long they would leave the skin on and then they would replace it. Wasn't it like every 5 days or 4 days or something? And they would remove that skin and then put more skin on. So being a donor is more than just your eyes or your liver. You can donate your skin. So that saved my life. And that's a picture of my hands now. Another picture, in the x-ray, I think there's 2 or 3 staples. They're close to the back of my knee. So after Hillcrest Hospital, I was flown to San Antonio, Texas, to a physical rehab hospital. It's all physical rehab, spinal cord, head injury, burns, you name it, they're working with you. And my full-time job was physical therapy, occupational therapy, nonstop. 8 o'clock in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon, break for lunch, and then hit it again. So that was my full-time job. I'm still waiting on my payment check, but let's see, I was there for 9 weeks as well. And I only had 2 surgeries, but they were pretty intense. One surgery, they put approximately 20 pins, 10 pins in this hand, 10 pins in this hand, and it was to help start working on my function where I could feed myself, brush my teeth, things I used to take for granted every day. It was to work on getting that back. And then the other surgery was for my eye and start working on my lips and nose area. So pretty intense surgeries. And physical therapy, this was the first picture taken me October 1st of '93. I had to have my head shaved, I forgot to mention that, in Tulsa at Hillcrest Hospital. They shaved my head to use the skin on my scalp to start working on reconstruction of my face. So, small clip of me in physical therapy. And I've shown this video to a lot of people, and that know me now versus during that time. And it's really hard for people to believe, that I'm that person. But I always tell them, if you have a good plastic surgeon, a good hairdresser, and LASIK surgery, you can look any way you want. It's a short clip. This is the first time that in physical therapy where I had help getting down on the ground, and then me trying to get back up. It's still very humbling to watch this. I still remember, how I felt at that time, like, are things ever gonna get better? How long am I gonna be like that? And I can't help or stress the point that this may not be the best time to do it, but if we just would have stopped what we were doing as soon as it started sprinkling, this, I would have my dad and sister and the two workmen, my friends here today, and I wouldn't have had to go through this. So just remember that in your daily stuff, If you feel like I should stop, then you should stop. Go with your gut. I did have to wear a face mask. I hated this part. I did everything my nurses, the doctors, PTs, OTs told me to do, but I hated wearing this face mask. But you had to wear it to help smooth out the scars, and it's another process. And these shoes, does anyone own some of those Skechers that are kind of have that rocker bottom? Nobody? Okay, all right. These were before those became popular. Ugly shoes. And I did ask my mom after I had them for about a week, will you please go get me some plain black Nikes? I've already gotten 2 citations from the fashion police, so I need to get rid of those. And I did promise to walk 2 miles a day if I needed to make up for not wearing those. They're horrible, horrible. And the cast, to get movement back, you could either have surgery, let me back up, laying in the hospital on the ventilator, you kind of stiffen up, and those with arthritis will know about that. But it's kind of like having concrete in your joints. They wouldn't bend. So to get my arms to bend, they did serial casting, and it was for about a week. They would put a quick drying cast on, bend my arm as much as I could, then put it on. The next morning at 8 o'clock, they would remove the cast, and I'd have like 2 inches of movement. So that was more effective than surgery. These were some of the splints I had to wear. I'm so sorry, I forgot to bring my bag of stuff to show you in person. And it was to help get function and movement in my hands. Adaptive equipment, I did have to have people cut up my food and brush my teeth and all those things, so any little bit of independence, I was all over it, because I did not like asking for help before and after the accident. So it's a piece of foam, and they had different sizes because my hands couldn't grip certain sizes. So I couldn't grip a certain, like a regular fork, so they used this so I could be independent. And I did pick up the whole piece of chicken and ate off of that, so I wouldn't have to ask anyone to help me eat. While I was in San Antonio, I got to meet David Robinson. Anyone a basketball fan? Anyone? Yes, some guy. So anyway, he came to see me in the hospital, and it was pretty cool to get to see him. And finally going home, I was there 9 weeks at that hospital, and then whenever I went home, things changed. I didn't have nurses coming in, doctors, people visiting, and that's whenever things kind of started kicking in, and sad. I didn't want to leave the house, didn't want to go do anything. If I went outside, then it was at night when it was dark. I had a lot to deal with, losing dad, sister, 2 friends, and the new person I was going to be seeing when I looked in the mirror. So I had a lot of mental stuff to process and try to find a way to balance and work through it. And that was really, really challenging. I did try to go to a counselor, but I just remember sitting across from her thinking, she hadn't been through the crap I've been through, so no thank you, I'll figure it out. But lots of prayer helped. Let's see. And then I had approximately 15 more surgeries. Functional, help get my hands moving and stuff like that. That was after one of my surgeries, and I look worse than I felt. So we were actually, my best friends in the audience, we were actually making jokes. She was like, look like you hurt really bad. Whatever, sorry. We have a warped sense of humor, you gotta have one. Another surgery, that was a tissue expander put in my back. And then the next one, they moved that skin to my neck. And the doctor used 78 staples to put it in. And the fake hands, the doctor said I wouldn't get or be able to achieve much more movement with my hands. So I had these, I call them fake hands, made silicone, and I would slide my hand down in it and it would cover, because I was very self-conscious of my hands. Anyone have a guess of how much they cost? Did it say? Oh, sorry. I was seeing if y'all were paying attention. You pass. Anyway, so the big running joke with my friends is, man, we should take those to the pawn shop and see what they say. Yes, sir. Never know. So after I did get more function in my hands by doing stuff around the house, my mom didn't baby me, but she let me try everything because she knew I'd be mad if she didn't let me try to do stuff before she offered to help. Stubborn. And so I started volunteering at a bird rehab center, and that really helped me because I actually was able to help another being, even though it was an animal. I love animals. But anyway, you get the idea. And somehow I got really brave and bold, and I was like, I think I want to try out for college volleyball. So here I went through the accident in '93, and then I made the team in '98. I first tried out I made it in '99. I first tried out in '98. I was horrible, but I tried. And I like to live life with no regrets, and that way, even if they said no, at least I could check it off my list. At least I tried. May have stunk, but I tried. But I did make it. We had a lot of fun, learned a lot of things, and that really helped my confidence. played outdoor soccer, volleyball, more volleyball. And then after playing college volleyball, I transferred to a different college, a Division II school, and I was a walk-on and threw the javelin. So, and all along this time, I'm still communicating with my burn surgeon at Hillcrest, and I would send him letters and pictures, updates of, because I knew that he received all that criticism about watching. So I would send him this, and he would write back and tell me that he kept all that stuff on his desk. So as I got more confident and physically capable of doing things, before the accident, I actually wanted to be a firefighter. So I was like, why not? Let's go for it. Go big or stay home, right? So I did take the physical agility test 4 times. First time, horrible. It was bad. I wrote a lot of the times and what the passing score was, 323 seconds. My first time was 5:10. Well, then in August I took it again. I failed, but I dropped my time by quite a bit. I would train more, ran 20 stories 3 days a week with a backpack on and weights in it, and yes, 20 stories. And then other 3 days a week, 2 or 3 days, I would take water aerobics class, deep water, shallow water, and then swim, run sprints in the pool, because that's not as hard on you as running stairs. So I trained really hard for it. And finally, I passed. At the end, you can see picture of the fire academy. I'm going to try to do the arrow. Right back there is me. And I know it's me because I have to do push-ups on my fist, because if I just can't bend that wrist. I lost like 10 degrees movement in it. So I would do push-ups, fist, and flight-handed. And we had to do wide grip, close grip, diamond grip. And so that was pretty tough. The equipment, they were really concerned that I would be able to use the equipment. It was like 45 pounds each. The circular saw, the shears, where I'm cutting the post on the car. But I did it. Didn't drop anything. I had to do all of these things. Those tires, I think that was like 200 and something pounds. We had to drag stuff in full gear. And then these are just pictures showing I did everything that they did in the academy. This is Gene's favorite, because I'm assuming he's afraid of heights. And it was a 50-foot ladder on the right, 105 foot on the left. And we had to climb up it, no safety harness, put our leg over the top and lean back as far as we could. I don't know why. This is a safety issue, I'll tell you that. Because I'm thinking physics, and I was not a physics major, but the likelihood of me landing on one of those small red mats, no. But so I had the white knuckle death grip on the ladder going up and down. But it was still fun. Same thing, basically. We had to use brute force, cutting through that board. We get to use the axe part of it, the sharp point. We had to use the butt point. And this was just before going into the burn building, which some of the instructors were worried that I was going to freak out, but I didn't. I just look at it like it was an accident. I've got gear on this time, so bring it, one of those kind of things. And just showing more. And I go to camps, volunteer, because they have little bitty kids and teenagers and young adults. And I do the stuff that they do so that they know that, hey, maybe we can adapt the equipment and I can be able to do these things too. And I've taken part in several research studies. The most recent one was for the Department of Defense for the Army. It has a lot to do with a temperature-controlled chamber. It's actually really interesting, but I'll save you those details. But I like doing anything that I can do to help make someone else's life a little easier down the road, then just call me. And it helps they paid. I don't mind. I still play volleyball, competitive, rock climb. These hands, yeah, don't judge me, because I will show anybody that, that anything's possible. And so a lot of people ask me, we're getting close to the end, a lot of people ask me what has kept me going, how with so much darkness, sadness, all that stuff. I said I came up with a bucket list a long time ago. And in order for me to accomplish most of these things, I needed to be able to physically be able to do stuff. So it was like kind of making a plan. I guess the most recent one that I did was the NASCAR 10 laps, no one else on the track. Oh my God, that was so much fun. 150 miles per hour. I would do it again. But just make a list. And these are some, like I said, survival tools, help you get through the dark times and stuff like that. I became a prisoner of hope. Once anybody loses hope, especially in any kind of recovery, if it's divorce, if it's an injury, anything, if a person gives up hope, then you've pretty much lost the battle. So you got to fight for that. And you address it, deal with it, set goals, move on, forgive yourself. Like some people ask, do I have survivor's guilt? No, because I personally believe that I'll be my family again one day. That's just my personal belief. And I would not want them to have to be here and go through this. So I would rather, that's how I look at it. Cry if you need to. Surround yourself with positive people, church, support groups, family, friends. Come up with motivational tools. I like quotes, and at the end you'll see one of my favorite quotes. And if you're a football fan, you're going to know this person. If you don't, come see me after. Just continue. Don't give up on your dreams. Example, there was a young man at the college, and I used to work the scoreboard for the men's college basketball game, and he was in a wheelchair, and he wanted to be part of basketball so bad. And for the next game, I gave it up to him so he could still be part of it. So even if it's working the scoreboard at your favorite sporting event or anything like that, you can still be part of it. And stop focusing on what you can't do, but what you can, and live life with no regrets. You're either going to make it or you're not. So what do you have to lose? Vince Lombardi. This is one of my favorite quotes, and found it a long time ago. He was before my time, but I love it. The good Lord gave you a body that can withstand most anything. It's your mind you must convince. And so I had to tell myself, a lot of it is a mental thing. And that's it. Anybody have any questions? Or Jean, if I missed anything?
Talk a little bit about who's in charge of the accident and the only person who's going to keep it from happening to people themselves.
One more time.
Talk about who's in charge of themselves.
Yes. So relating it to your safety conference, I kind of mentioned this before. If you could go back, and if we would have just stopped. I know that now. Hindsight's always 20/20. But if that little voice in your head ever tells you we probably shouldn't be doing this. Then go with that. No matter if there's a deadline, if I'm going to cut a few safety corners, don't do it. I promise. What I've gone through is not worth those 2 little safety corners. I don't know if there's any welders in here, but a good example, your fire watch, oh, they're napping down there or they're playing on their phone. Don't do that. Throw something at them. This is your butt. This is your life. I promise you don't want to be burned, or you don't whatever it is that you're welding to blow up, okay? Setting out cones. Oh, I don't feel like putting those extra 5 cones out. Put the damn cones out, okay? I'm just telling you, don't cut corners. I cannot stress that enough. Cannot.
Thank you. Hey, what courage do you think it took to do this?
Thank you. Thank you. I'll step down.
I can assure you one thing, if I ever go to war, I want this lady in my foxhole. I mean, I've heard this story over and over and over again and kind of lived through part of it, but, her message is so compelling. You're in charge. Each and every one of us go out and do something every day, you're going, wow, maybe I should have thought a little better through that before I did it. But I think it's through others' pain that we actually learn things. And we've all had people that worked with us that got hurt. As an elected official in the past, I had someone who actually was a fatality on the crew, and you just don't get over it because it's not something that you can plan or tell people how to deal with it. But it's human spirit like Gina. And for the children in the room and the wives who can talk to their dads, their grandfathers, their mothers, please think about what you're doing while you're out there. We provide the insurance coverage for the state, for the counties under workman's comp. And we have Dale Freck. Where is Dale? I've lost him someplace in here. But Dale's our safety coordinator and our risk guy. Anyway, he drives himself to almost insanity about going out and talking about safety in the workplace. And, we still see a huge frequency of accidents over and over and over again. And unfortunately, they're kind of the same accidents. But we're not going to stop. And Gina's not going to stop. And you're not going to stop. And you as a child and a wife and whatever, tell them every day, please take care of yourself when you're out there. Well, anyway, I think this, I'm sure this was as emotional for you as it was for me to go back through her story with her. I think Gina has just began her journey. I think that as she moves on with it, she's writing a book now called about Rebuilt. Her bio is in the program and the agenda that you've got. And read her story. I've read the manuscript. I felt like I was in the room the day the hot water tank inflamed the room. And she's told me privately, the hand of God was on her shoulder every day. And when they brought her to Hillcrest, I'm going to tell you, there is a provision in burns that you take your age plus your percentage of what's called full thickness burns, which is burned to the bone, and that gives your mortality rate. My math isn't very good, but I can tell you what her chances were when they brought her into Tulsa. And she was below the mortality rate. She was way above it by about 10 points. And the doctors told me that they had never had a patient that they tried as hard to save a life as they did her. But the bottom line was she and her father were in charge of her life at that point. So anyway, we're so grateful for you to come. I think that there's some people in here who learned a lot. Okay, in your program, and I don't want anybody to leave when she leaves here because we got a special tribute to families before you leave this room here today. But we had a legislator who came to the legislature, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and the first time she came to our conference, I'm going, who is this person? And I mean, I'm going, boy, she's not the average legislator that we have at the conference. I mean, she was running around and like the Energizer Bunny, and she was talking to people, and she was in their face, and she was talking to them. So I go to Capitol, and I go to her office, and you talk about brutally honest and asking questions and tough. She was that person. But she became a friend to county government, second to none at the state capitol. And she has now been elected statewide. One of our statewide elected officials is the Commissioner of Labor. You look in your program, and we wrote a little bio about her, but it says, you know, smart as a tack and tough as a what? What do I write in there? Smart as a tack, tough as nails. That's what we wrote in there. Smart as a tack and tough as nails. So it's our pleasure this morning and our honor to have Leslie Osborn, Commissioner of Labor for the state of Oklahoma. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Well, first I want to say that it's really hard to follow somebody who did such a job as Gina just did, and an incredible spirit of courage and the braveness that you have to go tell your story. Me, I grew up agriculturally on a cattle ranch, and then I raised my 2 kids in a production agriculture operation, and you see so many accidents in agriculture. How many people in this room know people that remove the guards off their augers and they stick their hand in the round baler and they, you know, when something's stuck, and all the things that we do, you know, they don't wear the helmets on their four-wheelers, they take off the rollover bar on their John Deere tractor. Guys, there but for the grace of God goes me. Every one of us could have this story, but I don't know that any of us could have fought it like you did, so thank you for that speech. First, I want to talk for just a minute about what does the Department of Labor even do, because most people don't know. Before I ever ran for the legislature, I had my own business in Tuttle, Oklahoma for 22 years selling heavy-duty truck parts and had never even given a speech. I was the one that was the distributor for the state for Easley and Ranch Hand Grill Guards. I may have sold a few of you in the room one before. And I could go lay under a truck when we leave and tell you exactly where to drill that guard so that it won't mess up the warranty on your truck. So when I tell people that, I always get a chuckle. But I think there's a few lady commissioners here, and well, we didn't all just sell Avon. So not scared of hard work. So I ran for the legislature 10 years ago, did that. Found out what the purview of the Department of Labor was, didn't just want to run for office to run for an office, ran several bills that affected the Department of Labor when I was in. For instance, one was setting up a compressed natural gas division. I saw Jacob McHughes in the room. He and I have worked tirelessly the last several years on natural gas credits, trying to do things that would help payment of changing vehicles over to CNG, especially when it was more price conducive for the counties. But that being said, I decided to run for this office. Now I get asked the most, what in the world does the Department of Labor do? Most people think that the things that we do are particularly about the labor force in things like union, non-union. Well, we passed right to work on the ballot in Oklahoma before I ever came to the legislature, probably 15 years ago. And really, our union and non-union groups play very nice in the sandbox together. We don't really have a lot of those issues. The basic function of the Department of Labor in Oklahoma is safety. Safety of the workforce and safety of the citizens. So what better time, and thank you Gene and Dale, who have always been fabulous to work with, to talk about safety. So we are required to make sure that we send inspectors or work with people to become inspectors to check every public access elevator and escalator in the state once a year. We have to do the same thing for amusement park rides, and that's everything from Whitewater to the Grady County Fair. Things that people take for granted, that somebody's making sure you're safe on these things. We're in charge of asbestos abatement. A big commercial project comes in and people want to cut corners. No, there's a way you have to do these things. Water heaters, boilers. In fact, we just did, I think, our first, and hopefully it will be annual training at ACCO. We don't always want to have to send our people where you get that bill, but there's a certain size and capacity of those things that have to be checked once a year for safety. And because of that, we did a training so that some of the county commissioners and their employees might be able to do that for themselves. So there's a whole lot of fields like that we do that are public safety, things that we just take for granted. But my two favorite programs there that really go above and beyond are PIOSH and OSHA programs. So everybody's heard of OSHA. The feds, they're going to come in and they're going to see that you're not doing things safe, and they're going to shut you down, whether you're private, whether you're public, and they're going to have massive fines. Well, what we try to do is go out and do those things so that doesn't happen. We're not the feds. We don't report to the feds. But we have two programs. One is PIOSH, and that's our public sector safety program. That's for every municipality, every school, every county in the state. We will provide free safety consultations. We'll come out and work with you. We just passed a bill this last year. If there was a smaller municipality that couldn't afford proper equipment that was going to do something dangerous like trenching or whatever it might be, we can come out and provide those kind of safety consultation services. We also do it in the private sector. And it's a fabulous, we had 554 businesses we worked with in the last fiscal year, saved countless amount of dollars of fixing things with these businesses that if the OSHA had come in would have fined them. But the main thing is we're keeping the workforce of Oklahoma safe on the job. Because of what we do with the OSHA and PIOSH programs, we have one of the lowest rates in the nation of people being injured on the job. And I just can't even imagine that that's not important. But for some people, it's trying to get by, it's cutting corners. So then we try to make it, well, if you won't do it for the lives, let's do it for the dollars. If you go through and are certified to do these types of programs that we have, your workers' comp rates will be cheaper. Those types of things. So we try to get people any way we can. We're really always trying to market what we do for the public and private sector. The second thing I want to talk about a little bit is where we are as a state, because it's been a rough few years. And I'm obviously not known for my timing because I was House Appropriations Chair the year we had the worst budget crisis in state history. A $1.2 billion shortfall. The year before we had $800 million, the year before that $650 million. We live in a balanced budget state. So that means that if we don't have the money, we can't spend it. That's a good thing. So because of that, we saw massive cuts. And during those years, prior particularly when I was there, we saw huge raiding of the county serve funds, which I'm sure what everybody in this room is familiar with. I personally believe that's illegal. I do not believe the legislature should have and does have the legal ability to steal from the revolving funds of any agency that has been appropriated that money. I would also like to suggest that if this happens again, that you consider that legally, because I don't believe that is legally possible. This year there was a fabulous bill, thank you to Senator Roger Thompson, Representative Kevin Wallace, I believe ran it, that put $30 million into critical county roads services. But that's making up for the over $200,000 that's been stolen for projects that were even encumbered. Now, one thing, go ahead. One thing I'd like to say is coming from my kids graduated from Amber Pocasset High School. Anyone know where that is? I'm used to rural Oklahoma. It's sometimes hard because our legislators that are sometimes making the decisions as the appropriations chairs have never left Tulsa and Oklahoma counties. Now, that's not a cut down, But it's hard for them to understand why we have REAP programs. It's hard for them to understand the importance of county roads and bridges. But I know, for instance, in my old hometown in Tuttle, I saw that and Kirk Painter, I saw him earlier here, that they were having a horrible problem with a road in Tuttle. The county came in and worked with them, a collaborative project. Nobody is better than our counties than going out and fixing a problem and finding the way to do it. But it has been, I think, to the chagrin, it's been an ashameable thing, if that's a word, what the legislature's done the last few years. There's only one way to change that. Every one of you in this room needs a relationship with your senator and your legislator that you can walk in their office or know their cell phone number and take care of those things and make those recommendations, because that's the only way you're going to affect change. And by the way, there's one person in this room I see back here that I get to vote for, David Anderson. If anyone knows him, is my personal county commissioner. Thank you, David. So that being said, what can we do to really be a top 10 state? So has anyone heard that in the last 6 months? We want to be a top 10 state. I personally believe you have to have well-funded core services to affect the kind of change that where we will go from being 45th to 50th, where we are now in almost every indicator, to actually being a top 10 state. We're making marked changes, and one of those was that we passed revenue measures in the last few years that made it where we could do things like the $30 million for the county commissioners this year. There was a lot of talk when we did that. I was fired as House Appropriations Chair because as a Republican, I pushed for revenue, and that made me a heretic. That made me a bad Republican. Personally, I thought that made me a good Oklahoman. But at the end of the day, we were 50th in overall tax collections. So just a philosophical question. Can you be a top 10 state if you're 50th in overall tax collections? Probably not. But hear me, and Mark Hader over here, who's my good fiscal conservative friend from Canadian County, you also can't if you're in the top 30 or something. But you have to be able to fund infrastructure. You have to be able to fund rural health care access. Nobody's going to move a business to a rural county in Oklahoma that's a manufacturing facility if they aren't going to have a close emergency room and good health care access. It's not going to happen. You are not going to move your state forward without good public schools, without community colleges, and without a fantastic career tech system. We have got to start pushing our kids into the trades. We have a massive shortage in workforce in the trades, and the trades can make fabulous money and entrepreneurial jobs. Not every kid needs a college degree. And we need to push that with our high school counselors of what are your aptitudes and what will the jobs be in your state when you graduate. That's what we've got to do a better job of coordinating on. We're working on that with apprenticeship and internship legislation we'll be working on this year with the State Department of Education and Career Tech. We've got to do more to pushing people into those types of things that make a difference. That's one of the main things we have to do. Another thing we look at the Department of Labor is occupational licensure. Right now, there are 42 entities in the state that license things you have to have a license for to have a job. What we're doing is going over those. There's 210 occupations in this state that require a license. We want to make sure we're not being overly onerous on people getting into the workforce. But on the other hand, we have to protect public safety. So there is some thought to just no licensing, let the free markets rule. If somebody got out of jail for breaking and entering, we might not need them to be a locksmith tomorrow. Now, if somebody had a DUI 22 years ago, I don't mind if they color my hair next week. We need to be reasonable, but at the end of the day, we need to do everything we can to train our next generation to have the jobs that will be there that are lucrative. One of the best things we've done in this state recently was diversification of of our jobs. When I came in, oil and gas industry, #1 provider of jobs in the state, #2 agriculture. Because of the aerospace tax credits that we've done in the last 10 years, we have astronomically grown aerospace jobs in the state. And a lot of times you'll hear, well, why are we doing tax credits? We're doing tax credits because the other 49 states are. If we want to be pristine, good Republicans and say we'll never do a tax credit again, then we'll never get a project again because we're competing against 49 other entities. That's the way the real world works. I wish we didn't have them, Mark, but because we do, that's the way the system works. We have to do them. We have shown the proven results that our aerospace tax credit, we get $8 back for every dollar we spend. OSU and OU Engineering are ramping up their programs 24/7. Most of these kids get internships. They start at $100,000 a year. It is unbelievable, and they can't find the workforce, so they're hiring constantly from out of state. Our kids need to be hired and trained to do those jobs, and that only happens with a quality education. So the last thing I want to talk about before reminding you that I would love to talk to anyone in this room about what we do on safety consultations for the public or private sector is the lack of civility. The biggest problem I believe facing the United States and Oklahoma right now is the lack of civility in our country. And I want to give you an example that I think is one of the things that shows to me where it hits home. I was on Flashpoint, which is a local news channel show that's on Channel 4 here in Oklahoma City once a week, and we talk on local issues with local politicians. And it was when I was in a runoff for Labor Commissioner. And I taped it on a Thursday. I thought it went really well. I talked about all the fabulous services of the Department of Labor and how we've gone from 120 to 80 employees, and we're lean and we're mean and we cross-train, and it's such a great mission, and we keep people safe. So I get up on Sunday morning. Boy, I get ready. I'm going to tape it. And I have this little thing on my computer called Google Crawler. Politicians or anybody does this, it tells you if your name pops up on anything. So after I've been on about 5 minutes, the first one hits, ding, Osborn's having a bad hair day. Okay. So about 10 minutes later, Leslie looks like she's put on 20 pounds. Okay. At the end of the day, I turned it off and deleted it. I had 67 comments about my appearance on Flashpoint, and every one of them was about my physical appearance. I'm not running for Mrs. Oklahoma. That's sad. This is why good people don't run for office. And this is what our country has devolved into, and it is ugly, and it is unacceptable. Social media has done a lot of it, and we have crept into letting it be allowable. Shame on us. So here's what I want to tell you. 2 years ago, after the Trump election, and I voted for Donald Trump at the time, I noticed that the news channels were getting on both sides so extremely, horrifyingly negative that I made a conscious decision to turn off the news. I have not watched the national news in 2 years, and I haven't missed a thing. I have an alert on my phone. If we get bombed by North Korea, I'm going to find out about it. And I read the paper every day, and I haven't missed a thing, but my blood pressure's better. I leave my TV on HGTV, so if anyone wants to talk about subway tile or shiplap when we leave, I'm your girl. But the point is, our news channels are killing us. Both sides are entertainment. Both sides are entertainment. I remember when my parents grew up and we ate dinner and then we all watched Walter Cronkite, who actually reported the news. It wasn't infotainment. It wasn't ugly, screaming, divisive talking heads. And to be honest, we didn't have someone in the Oval Office who called everybody dirty and ugly and nasty and disgusting. But now because we do, it's acceptable. So I want to make this pitch to you today. If you get up every day and turn your news on to CNN or CNBC, and by the end of the day it's still on the same channel and you're watching Stephen Colbert to get your news, you may be the problem. But before you get excited, if you get up every morning and turn it on to Fox News, and at the end of the day you still have it on Fox News, you may also be the problem. Because, my friends, we always think it's the other side. See, we're the ones that are right. They don't understand. That's bullshit. It is wrong. So my ask to every audience of every speech I give is turn off the news. Number 2, talk to your family. Do not allow the vitriol that has become where we talk about people's weight and appearance and intelligence levels. How about if we get back to eating dinner with the family and worrying about our own selves? How about if we take off? How about even more beautiful if we take off the Democrat and Republican label and come together and work as Oklahomans? You see, we're electing too many people to the legislature that want to save your soul. They want to talk about abortion, gods, guns, and gays. That's not our job. If you want that fixed, Mark, don't narc me out. If you want that fixed, go to your church on Sunday morning. Talk to your family. Get involved in your community. Work at a homeless shelter. Go work at a prison. If you want to go to the legislature, come fix my roads and bridges, my schools, my system of infrastructure, and my CERB fund. That's how we change Oklahoma. Don't come there to save my soul. So at the end of the day, if I can please beg everyone in this room to take off the labels, stop listening to the news, and get back to being the good-hearted, beautiful Oklahomans and Americans we can be, that's my ask. Thank you for letting me speak.
Commissioner, come up here. Gina, come up here. Don't anybody leave this room. The message you just heard from both these ladies, I hope carries you for the rest of your life. For the children in the room and the young people, and if you're an elected official in this great state, and if you're married to an elected official, or your grandfather or grandmother, or you're an employee of the counties out there, you hold a special place in the service of public for the state of Oklahoma. To follow up what the commissioner says, you know, our forefathers gave us a great experiment in democracy. And while others will talk constantly about what's wrong with a wonderful country, this is still the greatest country on this planet to live in. And if you will do nothing else when you leave here today, take one moment of the day to say something great about the country you live in and the elected officials and the employees that work tirelessly to make it safe and secure. Because you people do things that other people don't necessarily want to do. You make decisions other people don't necessarily want to make. And so, in the spirit of this being a family conference, Jack Strain, please come forward. In the spirit of this being a family conference, our carnival is getting ready to start upon the conclusion of this. The hot dogs are hot, the hamburgers are fried. The people are ready for the games for the children, because this is your conference, but this is your country. And I want everybody to stand. I want you to hold hands with the person next to you. And our good commissioner from Texas County is going to lead us in a song that we all should celebrate every day.
You going to mess it up, Gene? I want everybody to please join with me. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the valleys, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet